And we are live. You know, today I just thought I'd create a show, just grab something out of the sky and talk about it. It's something that a lot of people, I think, talk about, especially when it comes to some paranormal investigations that involve indigenous people. Um, there's a lot of controversy, I think, out there about curses and things of that nature. Um, Native Americans, the indigenous people, weren't really about curses as they were about protecting sacred places. And they believed greatly that these sacred places were a place where the body would decompose and then would be put back to the soil. Um, there's a lot of people here recently that has asked me if I've had cleansings because of some of the bad dreams that I have associated with, well, this place right here. Everybody's pretty much aware of, my book, In Too Deep. I frequently have night terrors about this place. And they say, well, I need to get a cleansing or something. And it has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with any kind of curse or anything. It's just it's such a major impact on my life that I literally relive those moments. It's kind of like, if you're in a car accident or something that's very traumatic, those things linger and they get really stirred up when I begin talking about the Stagecoach Inn. So we had one person in here for a second. Now they're gone. I guess they're just probably bored with what I'm talking about. But anyway, in my next book, let me see if I can bring it up here, if I can find it. In my next book, here it is, In Conflict. Um, I talk about a little bit about some things that went on while I investigated there. And, I find it very interesting what people talk about when they refer to, Native American burial ground. Well, I found this little clipping here. I think you might find it interesting. I bring it up here. Um, this basically it talks about Native American burial grounds, and it says also something of it's so hard. It's really small to read. And I'll just go on. It says because it's implied that burial ground was possessed by spirits of the dead natives, as in most Indian burial ground stories, but by other than Wendigos, cannibalistic demons, and other creatures that could possess the human body. Um, I found that to be a very interesting statement, mostly because I've also read further that a lot of these indigenous places where people have built houses, um, evil will come upon them. It's what I have found. Let me see. I found some stuff. It's called a trope. I guess it'd be kind of related to uh, a curse of some kind, but it's called a trope. It's the Indian burial ground trope, frequently used in example supernatural events and hauntings of American popular culture. The trope gained popularity in the 1980s, making multiple appearances in horror films and TV shows after its debut in the Amityville Horror. Um, that's just one example of uh, these tropes, and this evil will begin to lurk until the land is brought back to its original state of what it was before the white people or whoever it is violated that ground. So people keep telling me, they said, well, just get the ground blessed, get it blessed. Why would you do that? That's think of it this way. think of it as it's a burial ground of ancient people, indigenous people. It's really no different than somebody being buried in your own family. If you thought there was bad mojo going on in a cemetery with your grandmother in it, and somebody goes in there and starts sprinkling holy water around trying to cast out evil spirits, that wouldn't make you very happy, would it? And that rings true as far as people that rob or take things from ancient native burial grounds. Um, they find beads and they find little trinkets that are associated with a burial ground, a burial area, and they take those and they sell it for money. Well, that's really no different than somebody digging up your grandmother or your father or your aunt or your uncle and steal their wedding ring. You wouldn't like that. So we need to be very careful when we're investigating places that aren't meant to be frequented upon. Uh, I was reading another article. Let me see if I can find it. Um, da, 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 da. This individual says, I'm sure someone else would be able to answer this question better than I, but I want to add a perspective that some don't think of. Disturbing a burial ground is the same as disturbing a cemetery. Do you want someone to dig up your grandparents? Wow. Burial grounds are a grave site. The word burial won't be the same otherwise. So, why would you want to do that? When the Moorheads ended up on the property that they built the stagecoach inn on, I don't think they were aware at the time that it was a burial site. It wasn't until Martha and Anna Moorhead were having their picnics um, underneath one of the oak trees that they would find beads. And then they realized this was native ground. They must have been having troubles there because John Moorhead, and take in mind again, these were very grounded people. They came from the East. They didn't believe in a lot of hocus pocus, but they did believe that there was bad mojo going on. And a lot of them came from the old country and they brought some of their traditions with them. And one of those traditions was burying or hiding items in walls, coins, food, and in this case, shoes. Shoes were known to hold the sole, the imprint of the wearer's foot, and that would be put in weak spots like windows and doors and around chimneys, places where evil could come in. They found shoes like that at the Stagecoach Inn. And I think it was then that John was aware that they had put something, that they had invaded the Stagecoach Inn area, and it wasn't good. But getting back to my situation, last night, I had some difficult times. I had very vivid. I gotta tell you, I had some very vivid dreams of that location. Sometimes, I can actually smell it, and after I wake up, I can still smell it. I can taste that mucky taste, that old stale taste in my mouth. I know it's not there, but I can still smell it, and I think that I don't think it has anything to do with being having an attachment. I do. I think it's just deep scars of investigating there. But I also believe that by inhabiting that burial ground, that sacred site, everything and everybody that was involved in the construction of that place is probably going to be held there forever until that land is returned to its original state. Now, people are going to say to me, "No, you can have it cleansed." No, you can't have it cleansed. It's just like you're trying to cleanse a cemetery, for crying out loud. I mean, I wouldn't want that to happen. Where my dad and mom and other relatives are buried at, I wouldn't want somebody in there throwing holy water around. I'd see that as a disgrace. It'd piss me off. You know, it, they're not made anyway to go in and do anything but visit the dead. And there's, in fact, in the Native American culture, there's a ceremony that you do. You walk in a certain way as you come into a burial area, and I believe it's from right to left. I have discovered something about myself, and that is it's not so much learning about the paranormal, which I'm still learning, but it's more so learning more about indigenous people and their beliefs. Just because you don't believe in what they believe in doesn't mean that they don't believe in it very strongly. And just that in itself is more powerful than and it can affect people in extraordinary ways. Um, have you ever seen the movie Jeremiah Johnson? Back in gosh, that's back in the mid 70s or something. It was Robert Redford was in it, and there were some pilgrims that were stuck in a valley, and the army came by his cabin and asked if he would uh, guide them to this valley, and he said he would, and he guided them to a valley. But on the way there, he came across uh, would have been, I think it was a Blackfoot or Crow uh, cemetery, burial area, burial ground, and he wanted to go around it. And some of the soldiers were saying, "Well, that's just hocus pocus. Don't worry about it. How long would it take us to go around it?" And he said, "Well, it'll add another 2 days to our trip." They didn't want to do that. Well, long story short, they passed through the cemetery, and he just had a really bad feeling. Well, what happened was is degrading that area as they did. Um, this tribe of Crow or Blackfoot, whoever they were, killed his family. They just killed him. So it's very powerful what the indigenous people believe in. Let's see, we got somebody finally got a comment in here. Hopefully, hello. Oh, it came across on YouTube. Yeah, I have it on YouTube. I have it on my book, my Dark River book collection. Thank you for joining in. How big was the burial area? It's huge. I'm going to show you a picture here real quick. Is it Misty? Let me show you something here. I got to find it. How big was the burial area? This is a picture. Just a brief picture. This is the Stagecoach Inn back in the 1920s. This is when John Moorhead lived at the inn. You can see all those trees, and way out beyond, you see trees. That was all Native American burial ground. This whole hilltop was designated burial ground. And this is kind of what this is in a manner in which they would bury the Sioux. This style. This is a shorter trees. They're not necessarily big oak trees, but this is what they would bury people in. They would make this scaffolding out of trees, and the reason they did that, they felt that it didn't impede them from finding their spirit to the afterlife. It'd make a quicker trip, I guess, than putting them underground. Burying them. They would put them up in the air, and of course their bodies would decompose and stuff would fall to the ground. And it also, putting them up high like that kept other animals from, picking at their bones. This is another photo of a scaffold. Um, but going back to your question, this here is a picture that somebody had sent to me of their grandfather or something at the Stagecoach Inn before it was refurbished. I want you to look at that tree there that no longer exists. It's been cut down. But you see that limb that's there to the right, and it's in a horizontal type position. That would have been a wonderful place for body to lay. And they would have put a native, probably a medicine man or somebody that had stature in the tribe, probably on that particular limb until his body completely decayed and fell and uh, well, there you have it. It's just that's kind of how it is. So you got another comment in here. Um, You're on Facebook watching me. Cool. Thank you. Hi, Misty. Uh, I'm not really gonna say a whole lot about this conversation until I get more information. I'm trying to find somebody, and maybe you know somebody that would like to come on my show and talk more about the indigenous people. And I'm part Cherokee. I am. I found this out probably 9 years ago, and I'm more Cherokee than I am white. How about that? But that doesn't mean that I know a lot about the culture, and I'm trying to learn that. And I try to bring that into my investigations, especially if it involves indigenous people. I try to be very respectful of an area if it has indigenous people attached to it. Um, they believe their belief system was a lot different from the belief system of the East, Jerusalem and Egypt and all that. They had a completely different uh, belief system in the hereafter. The Cherokee, for instance, was probably the easiest to convert over to Christianity. Their belief system was really held close to the way the Bible was laid out, with a lower world, a middle world, and an upper world. Basically, heaven and hell and in the plane that we live in right now. And they were more easily transformed from the native ways to from their indigenous culture. But it doesn't mean they still don't believe in those things. That's why we need to be, as investigators, very cautious and very respectful of these native places. And just because we go there, if you would happen to find a rock or a bead or an arrowhead that's laying on the ground that is in one of these places, I would suggest to you to put it back and be very respectful of that and try to leave something behind and show your respect to the dead. I've got somebody in here. Okay, this is interesting here. It says, I don't know why, but on the photo, I see a Native American right to the man standing by the bottom window. It could just be a bush outline. Yeah. Well, let's take a look. If I can find my way back there. Is it this one you're seeing? I see a dog. I'm going to blow this up. I can blow it up on my end. I don't know what you can see at your end, but I can blow it up on my end here. I see a dog and I see a man or a boy with that dog. Um, really looking, I'm really straining my eyes here to look. People sometimes see things that I don't. Um, I'm not seeing anything there. It doesn't mean that there's not. Um, People see things all the time that I don't see. uh, but it could very well be that there's something there. I just don't see it. We can try another photo if anybody can you see something in this photo? That'd be really cool if you could see something in here. This is from 1920s. That big tree there to the left was still standing until about 4 years ago when it collapsed, and it literally collapsed straight down upon itself. It was the strangest thing. I had just done the last investigation of the Stagecoach Inn. It was the last investigation I ever did there. Thus came this book, the In Conflict. That's what this is about. The last investigation in conflict. But I had done that investigation there, and shortly thereafter, there was a huge storm that passed through, and that tree was the only tree that was damaged. The rest of the house wasn't. And I want to get back into something real quick. I'm going to jump back to another shot here, real quick. Just this little clip about what does it say? It says, basically, it says that these burial sites aren't protected or guarded over by dead natives, but rather they're guarded over by Wendigos and demonic type forces. Now, that to me was chilling because I'm not going to give up the whole story. But on that last investigation, I was witnessing things outside of the Stagecoach Inn. You'll have to read about it when the book comes out. Um, Craziness. I don't know what that was. And I was in my Durango. Still had my old Durango. I didn't, I call it old Brownie. I didn't have the Ford Explorer like I have now. But it's all those kind of things, those impactive things that bring these dreams that I have to life. I wish I could show it. Maybe some of you've seen the photo or the artist depiction. I hired an artist to do a painting for me, and I described in kind of detail of what I see. And they did this painting, and I can't even describe how they do but it's really original. And when I seen it, I just thought, that's it. That's what I see in my dreams. It's something that is familiar but not familiar, but it was the end, and that's how I see it. Again, I talk about that in the book that soon is coming out. Let me see. Oh, she says yes. That photo, was it the first photo? Real quick, just tell me, was it the first photo or the second photo? I'm thinking it was the first one. We can go back to the first one. Says, I took some close-up pictures. I will send them to you online. Okay, that'd be great. Yeah, I'd like to see them. I would. I'd like to see them if you could. As long as they're not. Pixelation is your enemy. Believe me, pixelation is everybody's enemy. So if it's too pixelated, sometimes you can see things that aren't there. They're there that really aren't there. It's kind of like seeing turtles and clouds, or something of that matter. So I'm gonna go back to that photo she's talking about real quick. This one here. Um, that is a Native American burial tree. That's off that gentleman's. It'd be his right. It'd be our left looking at it. Um, the Stagecoach Inn, I believe, uh, was haunted by something very dark and evil. It wasn't indigenous people. It was something that stays there. It doesn't follow you home. It can't. I mean, how can it enforce what it does if it follows you home? I do think there are certain individuals that find their way out of there. I think this is what's really hard about doing one of these shows by yourself. I haven't got somebody I can just have a conversation with and bounce ideas back and forth, have a sounding board. Maybe somebody would like to join me on a show sometime. I think the satanic rituals that they had there, and they did have them. They were back when the inn looked. Let me see if I can find a picture of it. Uh, I don't have. Well, yeah. When the inn looked like this, there were people that were showing. They were going out there and they were doing satanic rituals in the inn. They were, putting pentagrams on the floor, and they were doing things to cats and chickens and rabbits and all kinds of things. There were nasty stuff going on. And I think they conjured up a lot of things. I had an email from a gal who claimed that her grandmother, now this is kind of out of my wheelhouse, so bear with me. Her grandmother was what is referred to as a white witch. Not my words, hers. It was an email. I don't know anything about a white witch. I'm not that kind of paranormal investigator. There's some investigators that can sit there and they can just whip off all kinds of mythical names and what they do and what they say and what they're capable of. I'm not that guy. Okay, I'm a guy that I validate evidence. That I'm a paranormal investigator, and I don't get answers often the first time that I show up at a place. I don't know who can. It blows my mind to this day that somebody can spend a couple hours, 5, 6 hours in somebody's house, and then give them a complete description of what's haunting it. I was at the Stagecoach Inn for 7 years and still don't know what was there. But eh, you know, getting back to what I was saying, some of what was probably brought in there was dark and evil. I'm thinking I'm getting some photos here. Was dark and evil, and those things affected me greatly when I investigated the Stagecoach Inn. I write about it in the book. Let me see. Yes, agree. Some images can go into. It's called pareidolia. If that's the correct word, it's pareidolia. It's when you see things that you think are there, but they're actually not there. Um, you got to excuse me for a second. I got to look. I just got to look. Uh, let's see here. Hmm. I'm hoping I can get into. Come on, internet's running really slow. Hopefully that. Wow. Says I've been Facebook friends with you for a long time. Friend request a while back. Yeah, I used to be Wanna G Paranormal. I'll have to read this in a little bit. Hopefully it's all good. uh, uh, yeah, hope. Well, you're getting my first book for Christmas. Which is my first book? That's. Let me see here. I hate dropping out of frame like that. This was actually, and this book, this was actually the first book. Okay. It was called Ghosts and Legends of the Stagecoach Inn. You can no longer get this book. I had probably 10 copies left. I mean, 10 unsigned, beautifully, still beautiful copies of the Ghosts and Legends of the Stagecoach Inn that I still have. I got to figure out what in the heck I'm going to do with these things. And then, of course, that developed into my second book, which I rewrote it for some certain reasons. It just need to be rewrote, and that's when I came up with the In Too Deep. So this is actually it's better written, if that makes any sense. The grammar's been cleaned up, the punctuation, the spelling. There was nothing really wrong with the first book, other than there were some problems with it I didn't care for, but we wanted to get the book out at the time. We were kind of under, I guess, a time frame with my first publisher. He really wanted to get it out, and I kept telling him, it's not right. And I finally got tired of arguing with him. I said, just put it out there. And so we did. And then later there were some things that happened that were kind of a deal breaker in our contract. And I also found out that he was the minister for the Church of Satan, of all godly things, the minister of the Church of Satan. So I joke with people and I tell them, no, no, not only did I investigate hell, but my publisher was a disciple of Satan. So anyway, you'll really like In Too Deep. It's a great book. You're going to equally as well, I believe, like In Conflict, what In Conflict is about. And I'm getting way off this whole indigenous thing, but that's okay. Uh, in Conflict is about my journey back to the paranormal. Uh, when I investigated the Stagecoach Inn and all those bad things, bad mojo, and my experiences there, um, it affected me to the point where I just didn't know if I wanted to do it anymore. Um, it just about ran me out. I'd been investigating, and I brought this. It's been 4 decades, 4 decades of investigating the Stagecoach Inn. I've been investigating since 1982. A lot of you that are probably watching this right now were even born in '82. And I thought I knew everything about everything, and I realized I don't know nothing about nothing. I know enough to know that I don't know enough. Uh, and that's kind of my slogan now. You're talking to a guy that I'm a novice. I'm a novice in the field of paranormal investigation. I'm not in any way, shape, or form a narcissist of any kind where I'm going to tell you that I'm right and you're wrong, because I'm wrong probably about 90% of the stuff that I see and I try to investigate. I just try to find answers. Is somebody else going to come along and find what I'm looking for? I hope so. I hope so. It's not a race for me. It's not a competition with me on who gets the best evidence. I just want this stuff solved. And I want people to understand, though, that this is a very dangerous occupation to get into. It can harm you physically, it can harm you mentally, spiritually. It can harm you in so many ways. Uh, I I don't even know where to begin. You know, again, people ask me, I said, well, did you ever do any, cleansings of yourself? I did cleansings all the time. When I investigated at the Stagecoach Inn, and I talk about it in my book a little bit, I would do cleansings, I would do smudgings and stuff out in the woods, because I'm attracted to the woods. I love the woods. I love being out in the timber. It's kind of like my church. It's not man made. It's God made. It's the Almighty, the Great Spirit. He made this beautiful wonder of the timber, and I go there and I feel really healed. But when I was in Ida Grove, it always felt like I was cleansing myself in a dirty bathtub, so to speak. And it's because of all the bad mojo that was going on there. And over time now, in the past few weeks, I've discovered and learned from different people that have come forward, that have told me things that the Historical Society had never told me before. We're talking about lots and lots and lots of children that died there of disease. I don't know what kind of disease, but I know that children died there of disease. I've also been told there were murders that occurred there. The book that I was talking about last night, I haven't got it with me right now. The History of Ida County, written by Giles Moorhead, it basically talks about some of the hardships and stuff, but it's real vague on anything else. But you got to figure this place was around, it's been around for 163 some odd years now. But in that time, that there were more than just rainbows and puppy dogs going on in there, as they kind of described in the book. Um, there were tragedies. I mean, in the little town of Ankeny where I live in Des Moines, the small communities and towns, they have their share of crime and robberies and stabbings and gunshot wounds and damn well that those kind of things happened back in the time of the Stagecoach Inn, and they probably happened nearby, but they were chosen not to be talked about. When I talk and I hear about people that were involved in the restoration of the Stagecoach Inn and telling me that they would see ladders being thrown and knocked over and nobody was there, but you ask the Historical Society that, they say, oh, no, 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 that never happened. Those things never happened. But people that were involved that weren't members, that were not members of the Historical Society, are the ones that were telling these stories to their families, and now their families are coming forward and telling them to me. So yeah, it's a crazy haunted place, and it doesn't need to be investigated anymore. You can go and look at it. Uh, Pam Nelson says Ida Grove sits in a bowl. A dark energy are heavy, so they just hang here. You're right, Pam Nelson. Uh, that's my wife's maiden name. Are you from Ida Grove? Pam Nelson. Uh, I'd be interested to know. I've done a lot of investigations there in Ida Grove proper, in some of the towns, and every one of the houses that I did an investigation in, I found crazy activity, and I caught it on camera. Yep, she says I lived there. Then you probably, maybe I don't know. I don't know how long you've lived there. My wife grew up there. She went to school there. She went to the high school there before they tore it down. Her father, his name was Vern Nelson. He was the vice president of Midwest Industries. She had a brother named Terry and Mike. Um, the house was on the corner of Fifth and Moorhead Street. Now that house has been tore down. The people next door bought the property after Pam's mom Betty passed away, and they kind of bought that property up. But we lived just kitty corner from the Moorhead House Museum, which I also investigated on several occasions, and I did catch some activity there. One of the cooler stories, and I'm getting way off track, I guess, talking about indigenous people, but maybe that's for another time. Uh, One of the cooler stories that I had there that was told to me was that at one time there was a security system that was put in there. Because they didn't want people to break in and take some of the nice antiques, and one of the motion sensors would. Oh, she says I'm originally from Odie Boat. Um, I know where that's at too. Battle Creek, all of them. Yeah, all cool little towns. Anyway, they had a security system and it had motion sensor kind of in the parlor area that kept going off. And I put in security systems, for many, many, many years. And usually for, when an alarm goes off all the time, it usually means faulty wiring or a faulty device. If none of the other perimeter zones are broken, if just one thing goes off in a structure or environment, of a security system, it means that there's something wrong with that circuit or with that device. Well, the security people kept changing the motion sensor in the parlor area, but it kept going off. And so they finally just took the motion sensor out. They took everything out. They got tired of changing false alarms all the time. Well, I had an individual that from the historical society, a nice young lady, was telling me about one of the Christmas. They used to have like these Christmas parties there at the old Moorhead House Museum. People can come in do tours. They had the whole place dolled up in 1800 style Christmas with a tree and all that kind of good stuff. And she was with her son. And it was after the event was over, and she was in the kind of the dining room area, was adjacent to the parlor area, and she said she's seen a woman with a white dress walk down the steps across the parlor area and then disappear into the staircase that led downstairs into the basement. And that would have been going directly across the area from which this motion sensor would have been placed. So I always found that to be kind of a cool story. I did look into it, I did check into it. I did catch some activity there from time to time, but it was nothing like this place. This place was over the top, just super, super. It's haunted, and I don't mind saying it. So anyway, I've done this now for about an hour. I've had some people come in. Thank you very much for coming in. I appreciate you following me when I come on here to yammer a little bit about the paranormal and the Stagecoach Inn. Again, I'm always looking for a co-host. If you'd like to co-host with me and talk about the paranormal here at Dark River Paranormal, that'd be great. Dark River Paranormal is kind of one man band. I'm always looking for a new team member. I got things going on coming up next year. Um, one of which is going to be Minnesota. Uh, I'm going to be going back to the Haunted YMCA again. I don't know what I'm going to be doing here in the state. I'm going to try to get down to maybe the squirrel cage again and see what's going on down there. But mostly I do just individual, residential type investigations. So that's kind of what I do. I don't like to pay to go someplace to look for ghosts. I've been there, done that. I know what haunted is. I don't have to pay somebody to experience haunted. So anyway, I think with that, I'm going to call this a day. I appreciate you coming by. Next time, I'll try to get a little more information on this indigenous thing. I think it's a very interesting topic. It's a topic that I like to talk about and learn more about, and to make me more aware of situations that might occur during a paranormal investigation that involves indigenous people. Um, but as far as cleansing the land, hey, they were there first. It's their land. We can't do that. We're intruding on them. They're not intruding on us. They didn't go out of their way to terrorize or curse or do any bad things to me as a particular individual. I crossed the line. I was the one who intruded on their space. It wasn't them intruding on me. So as far as getting shamans and holy water and doing all these things to cleanse an area of evil, well, I don't think that's right because it's not evil. It's a very holy place when you visit a Native American burial site. So with that, I will say goodbye. Have a nice day. Be kind to each other and stay spooky.